left, of course, is Senator Linda Lopez, who is also, as you know, in leadership in the New Mexico State Senate. She was leading and has been a long champion of reproductive rights and access, and as you know, was instrumental in the repeal of our antiquated and, in our view, unconstitutional for the state constitution, criminalization of abortion to providers. On the books statute that is no longer here thanks to the leadership of the New Mexico legislature. And while it should never have existed in the first place, I think it is fair to say, Senator, that we certainly were tipped that this is a direction that could occur with the U.S. Supreme Court, and certainly other states have been attacking the rights of women and other populations, including the LGBTQ populations. So this is a state that's been making sure that we do everything that we can to thwart those issues. All the way over on my left, I do this, it's hard because you guys are seeing it from the opposite direction as this is being viewed, but we've got my good friend who I haven't seen in person in a long time, who is the executive director of the New Mexico Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice, long name, Joy Lemon Sanford, who will be speaking. And I'm going to get two people wrong. Mariana Anaya, who is clearly the I don't like saying lobbyist, you're an activist and an advocate and someone who's got a long-standing history of incredible expertise in women's rights, women's access to reproductive rights, choice, and we're delighted to have you. I just don't know who we want to go to first, Planned Parenthood or the ACLU? So we've got Planned Parenthood with us in addition to our activist. And so Kayla Herring, I want to make sure that I get that right, will also be providing remarks. And of course, from the ACLU, we've got Ellie Rushforth. So I'm sorry we didn't put the tags out. I know everyone here. I think you all know everyone here. I wasn't clear about the order, so thank you for putting up with us. Because we wanted to do this quick and wanted to reach out to folks who were already navigating in this post-Roe world, but we're navigating when that opinion was leaked, and we didn't need a leaked opinion, which is why we repealed the antiquated, unconstitutional, I want that repeated over and over again, criminalization of providers, piece of, or statute that was on the books in New Mexico. Because if you're not fighting for protection and women's rights and the rights for every person's privacy protections and due process, then you are putting yourself in a position where whatever the climate is, where you're endangering and imperiling, I don't even know if that's a word. And so it's still shocking, frankly, that we're having this conversation. But we will not further imperil the rights and access points of anyone in the state of New Mexico, and I've been saying it all weekend. As long as I'm governor, everyone in the state of New Mexico will be protected. Out-of-state residents seeking access will be protected. Providers will be protected, and abortion is and will continue to be legal, safe, and accessible. Period. And that's what we've been fighting for, all of us, our entire careers, no matter how we have interacted based on a number of positions. So here's what this executive order does. There are two that have already been executed in the country. I think the one that folks are talking about the most and is the most recent, which is Massachusetts, but Minnesota also did an executive order. I leaned in early before the weekend saying New Mexico is going to do more and invited everyone to be paying attention this today, but be paying attention every day, because I think that we are in, frankly, a national battle for freedom, access, protections, privacy rights, and certainly access to reproductive services, abortion and abortion care, and all reproductive rights, as well as all other equity and equality rights for all populations. So this particular executive order does exactly what you expect it to do. It says to providers that in addition to repealing our criminalization statute, that we are also signaling to other states that our providers are protected in the state of New Mexico. And what does that mean? It means we will not cooperate for any criminalization or attempt at removing a license or holding accountable a provider here who might be under a national license or regional license, that we will do everything we can, including I will not be executing, if there were any warrants for extradition for any provider related to this issue. Now, certainly, if we have what we believe constitutes what we know as crime, murder, theft, rape, the standard course of absolutely applies. This is about interfering with protecting women and the rights of all populations, including transgendered populations, to have access to reproductive care, abortion, and abortion care services. And given what Texas is signaling and Oklahoma is signaling with the all-out bans and the trigger laws all moving forward, I think that you will see a coalition of states that really work to shut off access everywhere. So in fact, while the Supreme Court said we're leaving it to the states, in fact what they said to states that have a very chilling and differing opinion than this state is that we're going to make it impossible in as many states as we can, and we do that by prosecuting providers and populations who seek reproductive services. And we are paying attention to that, and so is Minnesota, and so is Massachusetts, and I would expect that we would see other states. I'm really proud of the collective work of the women who are with me today, and by the entire state of New Mexico, who has made clear that we were, before the leaked draft opinion and the current opinion, a state that fought for equal rights for everyone and protected safe, accessible, easy to navigate abortion and abortion care services. And we're going to keep doing that. And this executive order is another step in what I hope to be any number, and I hope you guys will talk about that, about what could come next, about what we will do to ensure that those protections will in fact remain in the state of New Mexico. So with that, and I'll sign when all of the speakers have spoken, I'm going to ask the illustrious Majority Whip, Senator Linda Lopez, to talk about not only this executive order, but the incredible career you've had in protecting women and the LGBTQ plus community.
Thank you very much, Governor. And first and foremost, thank you so much for your leadership. And as we say, ganas, to be able to come forward with this particular executive order that you will be signing shortly. I also want to say thank you to all of the advocates who are here, those who do the work every day, those in our communities who put their heart and soul into the work, working with persons in our community who need to access abortion services and care. I also want to say thank you to my colleagues for the work that we have done also in repealing, with our governor's signature, the criminalization of abortion in the state of New Mexico. For what other states are doing right now after the decision on this past Friday, criminalizing abortion in this country is a no in the state of New Mexico. For those who provide services, for those who will have to come to our state, not for those who may, but they will be coming to our state of New Mexico, we want to make sure that they are safe. And again, appreciative, Governor, for your leadership in doing this, because we know that other states will be trying their hardest to criminalize this action. And we need to make sure that our professionals and those within our borders are protected. And I know this will do that. There's much more to come. We know, and I know that the state of New Mexico will be ready under the guidance of our leadership sitting here to my right. And as I have said before, in many other conversations this past weekend, I had an opportunity to visit Mexico, south of the Rio Grande. Our sisters to the south have no longer the ability, nobody down there can be criminalized for abortion anymore. For those who are south of the Rio Grande, Mexico, Colombia, and other countries, speaking with some of them, they said they looked up to us. But after a conversation with them, Governor, they were incredulous at what this country is coming to. Just as those of us I know who are sitting here, many out in our communities. But this is going to help to protect, Governor, and I know that we have much more work to do. So as I say, to criminalize anyone providing these services, hell no. Thank you.
Well, that was clear. We've got those providers' backs. I'm going to ask Ellie Rushforth to talk a little bit about, frankly, anything, but clearly the ACLU, which does the work of making sure that irrespective of the issue or the individual, that we stand up for equality and folks are protected. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Governor. And thank you, Senator. It's been a long several years, and it's been a long weekend. And I'm so grateful for your leadership and your collaboration and these very important steps that we're taking to protect not only providers but patients as well. The Supreme Court dealt a devastating blow to equity and equality in this country. You cannot have a functioning democracy without the ability to make personal decisions, personal reproductive health care decisions. That ability is not an outcome of democracy. It is a pillar of democracy. And at the ACLU, we are doing everything we can in collaboration with leadership, with our allies, with our partners, to ensure that no one is criminalized, no matter who they are, where they come from, or how much money they make, for making a private medical decision. And beyond that, the ability to access this safe and legal care confidentially and compassionately is something that I'm particularly proud of here in the state of New Mexico. Every person deserves the dignity to decide what is best for them, their families, and their communities, no matter what their zip code is. And we believe deeply here at the ACLU and in the state of New Mexico that that ability is fundamental to your ability to participate in this functioning democracy. And so as we collaborate and brainstorm and work together to figure out how to best protect patients, providers, helpers, I look so forward to working with this administration, with our leadership, and everyone at this table. And those of us that are not at this table. Reproductive health rights and justice advocates from all over the state and abortion funds and providers are doing the work today. They will be doing the work tomorrow. And I look forward to continued collaboration and leadership from the reproductive health rights and justice community, particularly those that have been doing this work not only for decades, but for centuries, including Black and Indigenous and other organizations led by people of color. So I just want to say again, this is such an important step, and I'm so grateful, and I'm really looking forward to rolling up our sleeves and continuing the work.
Well, me too, and there's a lot of work ahead, frankly, of all of us, and thank you very much for your remarks. I'm going to ask now Joan, my good friend, Lamonyan Sanford, who is the ED for the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice, who I introduced earlier. Joan.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you, Senator, for your leadership and your support. And you know, we and my team are so so grateful, but not surprised at all at your leadership today, because your experience many years ago as part of our volunteer team, you understand what this means at a very deep level. So thank you so much for your leadership today. And because we understand as a faith-rooted organization that access to abortion is religious freedom. And as a faith-rooted organization, we would have been and we will continue to fulfill our sacred duty to trust the faith and values, the personal conversations that people have with the divine as they understand it. And they make those decisions prayerfully and thoughtfully, and so it's our duty then to support those decisions and frankly get out of their way and make sure that they can do what they have deemed best for themselves, their families, and anyone else to whom they are responsible. And so I'm just so grateful to you for your leadership in protecting my wonderful team behind me who are going into these states. Of course, what happened when I'm talking.
Direct service provider right here.
Right.
I was going to say it's a volunteer.
But these are the people doing the hands-on work and going into these hostile states to support people and make sure they get the support they need to get here in New Mexico, where they can access some of the best reproductive health care that's out there. And so, thank you. We'll continue to do the work with your support and leadership.
Well, it's going to take all of us. I really appreciate that you're here today, and COVID is still, thank you, those of you for wearing masks. For many folks, I haven't seen them in person, and so, except for this weekend. I saw Jonathan. I'm going to ask Kayla Herring from Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains. And for those of you not familiar with the regional aspects, it's more than just New Mexico, but it's a very crucial partnership to support, of course, the individuals that we want to fight for reproductive freedoms and access, but also creating an organization, if you will, in responding to the things that were difficult and challenging to navigate before eroding our constitutional rights, or not even eroding, they took them to figuring out how we can use that partnership in a meaningful way to support the individuals, women, and families who deserve our support. So, Kayla, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Governor. In New Mexico, our families have taught us to be there for each other and for our neighbors. And right now, that's the first thing we can do. Ensuring that our healthcare providers who are in our health centers day in and day out, providing compassionate abortion care, can continue to do so. And that our patients, not just here at home, but those who are traveling hundreds of miles to access the comprehensive abortion care that they need, are able to do so free from government interference and from violence. We are entirely grateful for our governor and for you, Senator Lopez, for repealing New Mexico's old abortion ban just in time. And we are also so grateful for you doing everything in your purview, as you said earlier, to ensure that patients and providers are getting the care that they need and are able to provide that care. And we know, Governor Lujan Grisham, you have been a long-standing champion for reproductive health rights and justice, and we hope that with your leadership, other governors will follow suit in protecting patients and providers across the country. We also need to make sure that we protect and expand access to abortion care across New Mexico, and it's critical that that work is led by women of color in this state. If you look around the room, I'm sure you will notice that many of our partners are not able to be here with us today. They are fully at capacity on the ground, providing care and ensuring that people will be able to access the care that they need today, tomorrow, and into the future. Bold Futures and Strong Families are some of our amazing partners who are carrying on generations of respect and compassion, ensuring that legal access to abortion care is also accessible in our communities. Indigenous Women Rising, the Mariposa Fund, the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice, and Planned Parenthood's Patient Assistance Fund are working to make sure that patients have the material needs that they need to access an abortion. Know them, support them, and donate to them. Our work is not over. For generations, many New Mexicans, especially Black, Indigenous, queer and trans folks, rural and communities of color, have lacked access to basic reproductive health care, including abortion care, under Roe v. Wade. We know that protecting our patients and our providers with this order will help healthcare providers continue their work, providing the full range of reproductive health care by making sure that patients and providers safely can access and provide that care. They can continue their critical work, including providing birth control, addressing New Mexico's STI crisis, and compassionate abortion care. As one of our state providers, Dr. Carroll, recently stated, abortion is love, abortion is freedom, and abortion is justice.
Thank you very much. And our last speaker, also representing Planned Parenthood, but a long-standing expert in women's health with a particular focus and expertise certainly in reproductive access and justice, Mariana Anaya.
Thank you, Governor. And also thank you all to the press as well for taking the time to report on this issue. You know, for a long time, it has been a bit swept under the rug, so we really appreciate you being here. Senator, thank you also for carrying the bill for the repeal as well. What I hope to do today is sort of bring this all home as well. So as my colleague Kayla referred to, this is about generations of New Mexicans, and this executive order specifically really speaks to the values of our community. So hope to bring this home in telling you a personal story. So I am one of the generational New Mexicans here in our state, and my grandmother, she was a staunch Republican. Her favorite color was red, her favorite animal was an elephant, but let me tell you something, my grandmother taught me the values that I carry with me today. And I know that my grandmother, anytime she made a pot of beans for someone or there was always food in the house, she would never deny a neighbor. And that's exactly what this executive order is doing today. It's reflective of the values of New Mexico. It's reflective of the values of New Mexico families across the political spectrum. My grandmother taught me to care for people. My grandmother taught me about respecting other people. And that's what we're doing here today. So thank you, Governor. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Mariana. And so with that, happy to take questions not only about the executive order, but about potentially other ideas. And they're reminding me that as we do that, get yourself in the queue. You want me to sign it. So let's do that. I will point out that, Nora, did you get the pen ready?
Yes,
So you tried to get me full of ink with my white suit on purpose?
absolutely.
Job well done. You get extra bonus points if you can get me. All right, on the 27th day, June 2022, New Mexico stands firmly with many sister states in making sure that both the individuals we seek to protect in terms of access and support will be protected in the same way providers will be in the state of New Mexico. All right. I might need a tissue. All right.
Can we take a quick picture with you?
Oh,
holding up?
yeah,
Is it
we're
getting
gonna
over?
need like a towel.
All right.
Good one. That is really good. Does anybody want to shake my hand? Sometimes I do think that as I tell the story about the pen, that my dad, fountain pens are tricky. And that he must be delighting right now All right, as long as I don't get it on the original executive order and on my colleagues, I am good to go.
Governor, Senator, are there legislative actions that you're hoping to take, and do you hope them to happen prior to next year?
I'm certainly going to defer to the policymaker in the room, but I would say because abortion is legal in the state of New Mexico, we don't need to do something before the 60-day session, but we're going to have to wait and see what other surprises are potentially in store from the Supreme Court. I mean, if the goal is, and it is, to make sure that New Mexicans are protected in every context and that we are standing on the side of equality and justice, particularly even, with another decision out today. I think that that's hard for me to sort of put that on the landscape. But today, I'm not asking or thinking about a special session to say codify Roe v. Wade, because here, it's legal. There may be a different opinion by the legislature, but here are things that I would expect the legislature and I aren't going to have to really talk to each other about. It will be more symbiotic. I am sure you will see additional public health funding to make sure that we are engaging in provider access and support. I am sure that we're going to look at educational campaigns. I am sure that we are going to look to codify it, even though, again, it's safe and legal. We'll make sure that we just do that. And we might want to buttress some other potential losses by the Supreme Court at the same time. Right. It may not be the only issue. I would say same-sex marriage, codify that. And I would argue that it's already established by the decisions in New Mexico Supreme Court. But just given how unsettling it is that apparently in this country precedence no longer has the same meaning, in my lifetime I can't think of one other example where the Supreme Court has lessened one of my constitutional rights. They expand them based on changing information. But to take it away, so I would expect that we'll see that in the legislature. They may want to think about, and again, I don't think we need it, but I don't have the power to, it's not a vetoing issue. They pass a resolution wanting to make it explicit in the Constitution. That may occur. I would expect that there will be additional work in Medicaid where we can do that with state funds that are specifically aimed and focused at legally and ethically dealing with the Hyde Amendment, which prevents us from using the federal side of the Medicaid equation. But I would expect that those things will all be in the mix, and you might have many others, given that you've been a long-standing champion that I have yet to think about.
And Governor, it's like ditto. Because again, we're still waiting to see what some of the other outcomes are from the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court. And before we rush to having a list at this point, we are in conversations, many of us, with our community activists also, just making sure that we're all on the same page, and of course working with the governor. But what you have on your list are many of the things that we are thinking about.
One thing to add that I have not worked through with my own legal counsel, and given all the lawyers here, is that I would expect states, and this one, to really start thinking about how you define safe harbor. While I'm protecting providers by executing to the degree that I can, successfully and legally, in this executive order, the fact that other states can prosecute families here, New Mexicans, for a personal choice, healthcare choice, by another state resident gives me heartburn. And I want to think about things that we might do in that space. So that was a signal to the other lawyers in the room, many here, to think about how that might be addressed. And I would expect I'm not the only governor thinking about that in this moment.
Are you anticipating any legal challenges to this executive order? And if so, are you thinking of responses to them?
I'm not expecting any here, right, in this moment. I think that the majority of New Mexicans, frankly, are with us. That's not to say that every New Mexican agrees with the position of the state, and that's not to say that we don't have some New Mexicans that would, not be identified at all as pro-choice, but pro-life in that debate. But I think that you're going to see some sort of weighting. We didn't get any legal challenges about whether or not the legislature, whether there was a crack in the repeal. So I'm not anticipating that, and I think everyone is actually trying to get a sense about where we are. Let me give you a caveat. I would expect that where you won't have local governments, I mean, I've already got some sheriffs who have signaled that not only are they refusing, which they don't really get to, so we have to think about how we deal with that in a productive, fair, legal, ethical way. But you have to enforce the laws aimed at reducing gun violence that are on the books. So perhaps we have a local government and a local elected official that cooperates in a way. They're not state government, that I find is inconsistent with this executive order. While that's not a direct legal challenge to us, it flies in the face of what we're doing. We're going to have to think through what we would do and potentially partnering with the Attorney General to make sure that we are minimizing those issues from occurring in the state. To tell you that I'm confident that nothing happens in that environment would be an over-exaggeration about the climate that I think we see in the country around this and many other issues.
Thanks.
Sure. I hope I didn't give somebody an idea.
Governor, thanks for this opportunity. The Jackson Women's Health Organization that was at the center of the Supreme Court ruling has indicated, the owner has indicated that she wants to open a clinic here to serve potentially out-of-state residents. Has your administration heard from them in terms of any permissions? And I guess along those lines, is the infrastructure here sufficient
It's not.
to serve people in the state and out of state?
It is insufficient, and particularly given the number of women in states pre this decision who, even with a constitutional right, governors can put a chokehold on accessing services by restricting funding, making it hard to navigate, making it very difficult, supporting organizations that create even more hostility in the context of free speech, which the ACLU would protect because it's a civil rights issue. But I mean, they make it really hard. So of course, women, families, individuals are moving to areas where you are more supported, more protected, easier to navigate, less hostile, where you also know that you're going to have continued access to abortion care after a procedure. So we do not have sufficient access here, and that has now gotten incredibly exacerbated. There was a story about the Reproductive Coalition's efforts to support women from Texas who came here. We've not been in direct contact that I know of, nothing from my office directly. I can't say that they haven't contacted, say, the licensing entities to find out about a clinical license. They need to do that. They have to be licensed. But we would love to make sure that access can be sustained in this post-Roe v. Wade world. So those are exactly the kinds of things that I think many of our partners here would find important tools and resources to maintain the access that we are promising will be available in the state. And I would expect that there'll be more.
But quickly, insufficient both surgical
And post-care. Well, because the spectrum, we have a varying set of both religious backgrounds, personal and professional backgrounds around this table before this day. I mention this in two ways. In the early 90s, when the federal government was weighing in on making sure that advanced directives, so that we were doing something about end-of-life decision-making in the context of hospital care in particular, where most of it was still occurring, even with hospice, still occurring there. Arguably, too much of it is still occurring there. There was a push by the federal government to have a uniform form, right? And there's a body of law where they do that. And in that uniform form, they did not recognize the healthcare decision-making rights of same-sex partners. So New Mexico was an anomaly. right? And I did that from my position in aging. It didn't quite fit, but as all activists know, if there's an opportunity, you get it fixed and addressed. So I have a long history about where I stand on these issues, well before being governor. With that being said, we don't do enough anywhere in this country, and I want New Mexico to keep leaning in. We should have fewer unwanted pregnancies. We should have fewer pregnancies from high-risk issues, including violence, including rape. We need to do more in the family planning and healthy family space everywhere in this country, including here. And we're going to continue to provide access points for family planning and contraceptives and Plan B and long-lasting LARC, reproductive contraceptions, all of the things that create an environment where abortion isn't necessary because we've prevented the pregnancy in the first place, which I will tell you is my firm belief that most individuals in this situation making a private decision are more interested in preventing that pregnancy. But we aren't going to limit any access in any context. But we're also going to be a state that has strong provisions for contraceptive and family planning supports and behavioral health supports so that that continuum is productive in every context. It isn't just about one side of this issue, it's about all sides of this issue. A healthy society is a society that has more protections and freedoms than not. It also takes families out of poverty here, which is an incredible other issue that must be addressed more robustly in the state. I don't know. Maddie, help me.
Would you be willing to incentivize providers to locate here or expand here?
I think everything needs to be on the table, because if you are promoting and assuring access as a constitutional right and you don't have access because you don't have providers, then that becomes a barrier. I want to think about that with the experts around the table and the legislature, but we incentivize providers all of the time. We incentivize businesses all of the time. That's what local economic development investments are for. That's what tax incentive districts are for. That's what repealing the gross receipts taxes are for. That's what enhancing Medicaid rates are for. That's what eliminating co-pays are for. So this is a state that's really leaned in any number of ways to incentivize access. Because if you say that you will make sure access is available, but there's nowhere to get it, then you haven't quite met that obligation. I haven't thought about what that looks like. I don't think the legislature has specifics about what that might look like for them. I think it's a debatable issue about the best vehicle. But I think right now, given where this country is, that these are ideas that I would expect to promote coming forward, and I would ask that you take a look at these kinds of ideas and bring them to the executive branch, see where they might fit. So nothing conclusive, but I think we need to be open-minded about what needs to be on the table to protect access.
Governor, I wanted to ask, your opponent in the general election on Friday said he would support banning abortion after 15 weeks with some exceptions. Wanted to get kind of your response to that, and also how prominent of an issue you expect reproductive rights to be in this fall in the November election.
I'm going to go to the latter part of the question first. I do think it is going to play out at the ballot box. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you what that means for states and for Congress or for governors. But I think that folks and the majority of Americans want there to be access, and I think a bigger majority of Americans are very concerned about what I've referenced as the additional issues that Clarence Thomas, in his opinion, supporting the majority, identified should all be reevaluated. These are chilling aspects about where the country could go, and I do think that folks overwhelmingly now, when you do the combination overwhelmingly, not just a simple or majority, but overwhelming majority, revisiting all of these privacy rights have a chilling effect on what Americans consider to be the right safeguards for their democracy, and so I think it plays out. in that regard, I think what you saw is a statement that reflects what we know in polling in the state of New Mexico, that a majority of New Mexicans don't want to eliminate abortion or abortion access. It is not the same statement that my opponent made in the primary. And I feel a lot like, and I hope that New Mexico voters pay attention to those issues, that putting it on a piece of paper during the time that you're running and having a different piece of paper in another election, I've been consistent on my record here, and somebody who wouldn't promote the right contraceptive access, who made that clear in the primary, I'm hoping voters will pay attention to those inconsistencies in the same way I feel some U.S. senators wish they had paid attention to inconsistencies when they were confirming some of our more current justices. And a governor, even with a majority in the legislature, this is a state that has a very broad veto power, which I think is important. And I hope voters are paying attention to that. You can restrict access in any number of ways. And I just gave you a bunch in the context of where I would expand access. There's a stark difference, even if you might have one or two sentences that seemed more moderate. My sense is that my opponent on this issue has very extreme views that have no place in the state of New Mexico for all populations that deserve equal protection under the law.
And I actually want to continue on this question, if you wouldn't mind, Governor. Thank you for all the responses, but I want to ask Senator Lopez about this, because this proposal of a 15-week abortion ban was presented as a compromise with the state legislature. So from your perspective and from your position, what do you think about this proposal?
Could you restate that last piece again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the 15-week abortion ban was
yes.
presented by
Right.
this candidate.
He would get it passed by the legislature.
It was presented as a
Yeah.
compromise to work with the legislature.
No,
And so I guess I'm asking you, from your position,
No,
what do
sir.
you think about this? Is it a non-starter?
it's a non-starter.
What is the legislature going to do if it's presented to them?
Traditionally, what we do is we have bills that are scheduled for hearings, and it goes through the process.
I don't think it passes in
But
the
it
current
won't pass.
context of the legislature. I don't
No,
know what
no.
you're the whip. These are hard issues, and I think there's still a growing debate that is not in the context of reality. Women don't always know. Women don't always have the right access points, particularly if you've got a hostile family situation that is eliminating productive access, particularly in the case of something harsh, which isn't tied to the 15 weeks, but I'm going to use this extreme example, incest. Or a statutory rape situation where families are loath to be engaged in a way that they need to be engaged so that you can make decisions early. And to create that barrier is not intended to do the things that I said upstream about preventing unwanted pregnancies. It's to limit access. And on the late-term abortion question, that is a very personal, difficult set of circumstances. And the fact that because we have this debate politically leaves any New Mexican or any American that thinks that any pregnancy is terminated in the last trimester because someone just shows up at a clinic is untrue and illegal. The circumstances that create that very narrow exception are horrific. And no American should stand in the shoes of families who have to make decisions about whether or not to engage in unlikely surgery to save the life of a child. I saw my family do that for brain surgery, where it's incredibly painful, incredibly horrific, and the outcomes for the treatment are entirely personal. And a mom and a dad or partners who have a name, who had a shower, who have a nursery, who have changed the way in which they work, to have a government tell them that we want to know what's the basis of that decision after two physicians make that basis is outrageous. But we have this nonsensical debate that somehow, not only here but around the world, that there's this massive amount of pregnancies. It's still too high, which tells me we need to do more on prenatal care, more in getting families out of poverty, more in making sure we have healthy babies and outcomes, we have healthy pregnancies, that we're doing the tests up front, that we get people out of poverty, that we reduce violence. All of that changes that equation. So it shouldn't be 1%. It should be 0.0001%, because no one should ever be faced with that decision. No one. But the fact is, they are. So let's do more about the things that would really save lives. And the other thing in this equation is that the legislature will debate the number of women who will die. This doesn't limit the number of abortions. It doesn't limit the number of late-term abortions. What it does is it creates more life lost. That's it. We're going to be a state that does right by this whole issue. Not going to interfere with your personal private decisions, but we can do more at the front end of these debatable issues for all families. They deserve that dignity in their decision making as well.
We'll go to our last question.
Too much? I mean, these are very personal issues, and given that I was a volunteer, until you see what women and their families and all of the populations I mentioned, including transgender populations, have to go through, it's tough. And I just don't think that we give enough respect to these personal health care decisions at every spectrum. They are hard, including the men and women in New Mexico who are now protected for end-of-life decisions. Do I have a U.S. Supreme Court that's going to take that away? We had a lot of work to do. One more.
So, you said to save lives. Senator Heinrich today put it on legislation for, child care. What's your thoughts kind of on that? And do you think that this will, be another stepping stone with the idea of abortions and stuff?
Well, look, again, I feel really strongly. I think I demonstrated that in kind of a aggressive response about what's really at stake here, because I mean it. But we're doing that work here, and I appreciate that there's a federal lift here. In today's society, and in this state too, and let's talk about inflation, it's real. Feeding a family is hard. Paying the mortgage and rent is hard. This is why we're doing rebates and why we're doing affordable housing. Child care is too expensive. And if you don't have access to child care, all the risks I identified in the back end are exacerbated and increased. And we cannot do that, which is why in New Mexico, so Senator Heinrich, which I really appreciate, is highlighting our successes. The fact that we have the largest child care benefits, and I will tell you, I believe unequivocally that New Mexico can be and will be the first state in the United States to have universal child care. That means not income-based. That means that no wrong door. That means that families who choose in the state-funded system, which includes private providers, would have access to free child care. If we want families to get out of poverty in this state, and we do, then we have to provide these options. And with the economy doing as well as it is, and I'm sure someone at the next press conference will ask me about the potential for, more dramatic issues like a recession. I wish I had a crystal ball. All we can do is make sure that we have healthy savings accounts. Oh, we do. Make sure that we set up funds that we can have access to so we don't have to reduce services. Oh, we did. Make sure that we reinvest in individuals with their tax money to the highest degree that we can. Oh, we did. So I'm feeling as good as you can about preparing for any number of economic realities. But notwithstanding, there's no reason why New Mexico shouldn't be able to deliver on that promise.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, everybody,
You're
so
welcome.
much for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
More. More.